Could take their seats, please. We would like to reconvene this regular meeting of the Board of Education, CUSD 201, tonight, March 24th, 2015. And if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda are approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 24th, 2015 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the March 10th regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, public comments. We have one card, and then after that, if anyone else would like to speak. Jason Benefield.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm here to discuss the referendum, the upcoming vote on the referendum. My family has lived in Westmont for 8 years. We have 4 daughters. One graduated the high school last year. We have 2 who are currently in the high school, a senior and a freshman. We also have an 8-year-old daughter named Ruby, who's at Manning. In our time at Westmont, we've had kids in each one of the buildings. As a parent, as a neighbor, as a friend, I'm concerned about the level of safety at these schools, knowing that at Manning, the situation, the entry, so somebody can walk in and not even check in anywhere. That concerns me. But other people have spoken about the safety aspects of the referendum. I'd like to focus in on the ADA aspects. Our daughter Ruby has spina bifida. She's confined to a wheelchair. She's been at Manning since she was 3. She started early intervention there. When they would do evacuation drills, our concern was that how are we going to get her out of the building? What's the best way to get her out of the building? And they said, well, if we need to, we'll pick her up and carry her. Now, that's when she was 3 years old. Now she's 8, and she's not getting any smaller. So that's becoming less and less of a feasible thing. So we're very concerned about getting her out of the building in the event of an emergency. Beyond that, she misses class time because of the lift. We're grateful for the lift that's at Manning. We are very grateful for the lift because it wasn't there when we started there. But when she gets to school, she doesn't immediately join her class because it takes too long for the lift to get up the stairs and then take her downstairs for the special. It's just inefficient. So she doesn't even join her class until they go down to their special. And that's a concern, the class time that's missed. When the lift's in use, it blocks the staircase so kids can't get where they're going. In an emergency situation, that's obviously an issue as well. Now, it would be easy for us, she's in 3rd grade now, it would be easy for us to say, well, she's only got 2 more years in Manning, let's not worry about it. Let's just push it off and maybe we'll focus in on the junior high, maybe we'll focus in on the high school. For us, that's a bit short-sighted though, because it assumes that there's not going to be another kid coming down with a wheelchair. It assumes that there are no parents with wheelchairs. It assumes that there are no grandparents coming for an event who want to get to that event to see their kid or their grandkid do something, and won't be able to because of the lack of ADA compliance. We understand that there are people who don't have kids in the school system here, and that it's easy to say it's not my problem as a result, but I think it is our problem. I think it's our problem as a town. It's kind of embarrassing to not be ADA compliant at the schools. If we're hoping to attract people to come here and live and bring their kids, they should absolutely feel like their kids are going to be safe here. If their kid has a disability, their kid should be able to get the same education as any other kid and have the means to do that. So, you know, we'd like to encourage that if you don't have kids in the school, vote yes for the referendum anyway. If you do have kids, vote yes for the referendum for the interest of safety for kids like Ruby and for all of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, are there any other public comments?
All right. Hello, I'm Bashir Al-Zakum, and I'm here with my friends. Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Sarah Schlax.
I'm Hannah O'Malley.
Aliana O'Malley. Hi, I'm Heather.
And we represent the kids of Westmont High School, and we are here to talk about the walls that are being discussed right now. If you haven't noticed, we don't have every single classroom that has walls, and the ones that do are kind of cut off at the top. And that doesn't seem like a big deal, but with us getting better and trying to be the best we can be, and being more into AP classes, like we have to focus on every single thing our teachers say. And I feel like that those walls, if we do get them, will help us a lot more than you guys actually think. I feel like with the walls, we could just focus on our teacher. We don't have to focus about that study hall that's being maybe a little bit too loud, or we don't have to focus on that one class that is doing a fun lab. We could just focus on our teacher and not get distracted. And I also feel that it's more of like a safety thing. Like, I do feel very safe at our school, and I feel that like we have everything top notch. Like we could, if tragedy happens, that we could get out and like we'll be okay. But for like my parents, per se, my parents are kind of worried like, oh, this wall is open. So like, let's say someone was to come inside, like a terrible thing to happen, like what would happen? Like these kids are less safe just because they're in a classroom that has an open wall. And I feel like it's more comforting for everyone there and our parents too to have those walls. You guys have anything to say?
I think if you ask anyone at Westmont High School that they would have, like I said, I think if you would ask anyone at Westmont High School, a student, that they would have the same opinion. It just helps our learning experience and helps our learning environment if there are closed walls for all the classrooms. And we are in support of this decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming and telling us your thoughts. Okay, are there any other public comments?
I'd like to make a very quick comment about it. Parent-teacher conferences were last week, and I have a high school student, and it was just interesting to me. Those can be pretty private conversations between the parents and the teachers, and it was just interesting in the open classrooms. You can hear the conversations on all sides of you, and it was somewhat inappropriate. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, consent agenda is next. Oh, by the way, there will be a referendum presentation coming up very shortly too, so there'll be more discussion on that. Consent agenda. At this point, we are going to pull the item number 1, personnel recommendations for after closed session. Are there any questions or comments about anything else in the consent agenda? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended, starting with number 2, approval of student tour request, 3, approval of IHSA membership, number 4, approval of ombudsman contract, 5, approval of March 2015 expenditure report, and 6, ratification of February 2015 regular payroll.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please, Mrs. McMahon.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes. Okay, then the first discussion item is presentation of monthly financial statements.
Okay. For the month of February, the district received $65,000 from the state, and to date, there's just under $416,000 that the state has vouchered, but we have not received yet. We're waiting on payment. In our education and tort funds, all that $65,000 that we received was in that fund, and in that fund, we're waiting on a little over $267,000. And in the transportation fund, we're waiting on $148,000, which is the fourth quarter, or the second quarter categoricals. In the expenditure side, in the ed and tort funds, things are running as they should be at this time of year. The O&M fund is 56.6% spent to date. It was 57.6% spent last year to date. So, again, we're running where we need to be. We've got a couple things coming up, though. They'll be doing the chiller replacement next week. So, that is one area where we will be, probably going over budget as a result of that unanticipated repair. And then in the transportation fund, we're slightly below where expenditures are below where they were at this time last year, but again, that is due to the timing of receiving invoices from our vendors, and we know that there were a couple invoices from Septran, and we did not receive the bill for Westway this month too, so that will catch back up in the following month. And then the lunch report is there, the activity reports, fund balance reports are there for your review as well. So does anybody have any questions?
I'm curious about all this money that's vouchered, particularly given what's been going on at the state lately. Do you think there's risk there? I mean, what's the prevailing feeling?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we've been experiencing this for at least, the past 5 years, Kevin, or more.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's kind of almost just like standard operating procedure. The fact that they paid the fourth categoricals on time last year was amazing. So, at this point, I don't think it's anything to worry about. If we don't, though, receive them really by the end of this month or beginning of next month, then yes, maybe they'll be behind where they have been historically, and then we'll address some things at that point and try and, obviously if we're waiting on 2 quarters, then I would start becoming a little anxious. But as far as cash flow, again, I monitor that, and we're okay cash flow wise without that money. I don't even count receiving that in my cash flow. So.
Okay. Yeah, I realize over the years we've become sort of numb to this, and every report you say, well,
right,
vouchered, and we all just accept it now. And I remember when this first started, we used to ask every meeting, well, what about this and what about that? And it's
it's just good to know kind of how much is out there.
Yeah.
We do keep our eye on it and pay attention to when we're getting that money. And again, I don't even include any payments other than general state aid from the state in my cash flow. So I assume I'm not getting any of those, and make sure we have appropriate cash.
Okay.
It does sound as if the legislation that's going through the House and the Senate now will result in some sort of reduced payment for maybe the fourth quarter. And I think the amount was 2.25% or something like that. It was like a total of $150 million out of the whole statewide education budget. So that will be spread out among all the districts. So that will be not just a late payment, but an actual reduction in a late payment.
Right. And then obviously when those things, we'll have to, readjust our 5-year projection, reevaluate our budget for next year, and, make adjustments accordingly.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay. Then the next item on the agenda is the referendum presentation. The district has been giving informational presentations, and in case anyone had missed that, we thought we'd take an opportunity to have Mr. Carey present that now. Again, this is informational for the community as to what the referendum is about.
Thank you, Marie. And so, as Marie stated, basically I'll just review the presentation that we've done at our schools the past month. But basically, first we're going to start with just sharing a little information about the district, because so often as we do the presentations, there's questions that we're asked as we work through those. And one of the questions we frequently receive is the age of our buildings. And so Westmont High School was built in 1976, the junior high 1974, Manning Elementary, 1928, the Miller Elementary, 1957, and then the Early Childhood Center district office at South School was built in 1927. And so all of our buildings obviously were built a number of years ago, and at the time they were built, they met the needs of our students in our community. But we know times have changed, and as we work through the presentation, we'll discuss some of those changes. And just some other changes that have occurred within the district over the last few years. One change is, for the most part, for all of our buildings and at the district office, we have changes in our administration, beginning in 2009 with my hiring, and then in 2011, the hiring of John Jonak and Kristen Kretzel, who was the junior high assistant principal, came over to Manning to be the principal. And then in 2012, we hired Jack Balderman as the high school principal, and then Edith Rivera was hired in 2013 as the Miller principal. Some of the things that the district has accomplished, we've opened the Early Childhood Center at South. We have an all-day kindergarten program at both Miller and Manning. Miller hosts the district-wide dual language program. And then we had a climate committee that met for a couple of years, and one of the recommendations was Rachel's Challenge, which is a character education program which we've implemented in all of our schools. We've had, and we'll show you a slide in a little bit, we've had several different facility committees meet over a number of years, and they created initially kind of a short-range list of projects, and those projects included creating new modern libraries at Manning and Miller and the media centers, and then computer labs as well. A kindergarten classroom at Miller. The high school was built with no windows, and so we, anticipating that eventually we'd like to enclose those high school spaces, we added exterior windows to the high school, and then air conditioning for Manning and Miller through the use of window units. By creating an early childhood center at South and moving the district office over to South, we were able to free up some classroom space at Manning. And then we were able to, some smaller classroom spaces at Manning, we were able to balance those, the square footage of those classrooms. And then over the years, we've maintained our neighborhood schools. On the financial end, we've had the last couple of years, we've had a balanced budget during the recession. Our last couple of contracts have been tied to, salaries have been tied to CPI. We had 1 year in which all of our staff and our administrators took a salary freeze. Over the last several years, we've received the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting, and then the board has adopted policies that require us to maintain a certain fund balance within our funds so that we can maintain long-term fiscal responsibilities. And so while many districts were going through cost containment, and initially that was the pattern in our district, we've overcome that, and we've actually have brought back some previously cut programs. We've been able to expand the curriculum at the high school to include more advanced placement opportunities for our students. Over the last few years, we haven't had conversations about cutting or reducing sport programs or the fine arts, and we don't anticipate having to have those difficult conversations in the future. Some of the successes that we've experienced as a school district, the high school, and when we do our PLC presentation, Mr. Balderman will address this, but our high school has been, we're identified as the most improved high school in Illinois, and that's based upon, if you look at graduation rate, if you look at performance on Prairie State, and then also performance in the AP arena. Our students, their ACT composite score was at a 10-year high. Again, we've had significant improvement in AP in terms of the number of students taking AP classes, the number of exams taken, and at the same time, we've actually improved our pass rate in AP while having those increases. Our Miller has achieved a significant increase in the ISAT math scores, going from 74% to 91%. And according to the Chicago Sun-Times, all of our buildings rank in the top 50% for schools in the state of Illinois. The board has demonstrated over the last couple of years that they listen to our community. And again, I referenced the facility planning that we've done, and we've had several committees look at facility planning within the district. And one of the consistent themes that has come back to the board has been to address safety and security needs within our buildings, and then also the ADA compliance issue as well. And one of the other changes that will occur as we address some of the safety concerns within the buildings, we're also able to improve the educational environment. So now this is our third go-around at the referendum, and so this is our referendum 2.0 and what's changed since last fall. First of all, with the high school, one of the some of the feedback that we got when the referendum was not successful was that people were concerned about using some of those referendum dollars for the pool, and so we've deleted that from this referendum, and so we're able to reduce the cost at the high school by $1.8 million. The junior high plan, it called for enclosing open classroom spaces, and then we were also again going to try to balance the square footage of those classrooms. And we're still enclosing the classrooms, but we're not going to balance the square footage, so we're able to significantly reduce the cost there, which is primarily due to changes in the heating, air conditioning, ventilation for the junior high. Manning, there was going to be a drop-off lane in front of the building, and so we're eliminating that from Manning, and so that reduced the cost by approximately $200,000. And then at Miller, some of the outside site work is been reduced, and then also there were going to be some significant changes to our music room. We'll still improve that space, but not to the same degree, and so that's a decrease of approximately $300,000. So we're able to, the original cost was $26 million. This brings that cost down, and so that we're able to reduce the question that we're asking for. So at Manning, again, it's a decrease of $8.4 million to $8.2 million. At Miller, from 4.1 to 3.8, the junior high 5.3 to 1.4, and then the high school 8.6 to 6.8. And the one thing that was important for the board as they were reviewing the costs and making these changes, they wanted to make sure they retained the integrity of what they were trying to do with our schools. And so they were able to do that. We're still able to accomplish our goals with this next set of renovations, but at the same time, we're able to reduce the cost. And then in terms of the plans, and this presentation again is available on our website, but all the green areas will enclose those classroom spaces at the high school. And then at the top of the slide, the pink area, that would become the new student visitor entrance. Currently, when you enter the high school, you enter the building and you can have access to the entire building. And so with the new entrance, you would get buzzed into the building and you would need to go into the main office similar to our junior high. And then you wouldn't be able to have that, again, that access to the rest of the building unless you're allowed access to the building. The high school, or the junior high rather, those green boxes, those are the open classrooms that we would be enclosing. And again, we'll be able to enclose the classrooms. Currently, one of the issues with open classrooms, it's twofold. One is the educational environment for students. Open classrooms, there's more opportunities for distraction for the students, so they're not able to focus. But then also it's a safety issue because when you are trying to lock down your buildings and lock down your classrooms, those classrooms don't have doors, and so you can't lock down those spaces. So those students have to be directed to another classroom within the building, and so then that again ends up being a safety issue for us. At Miller, currently the office is on the second floor of Miller, and so that would be relocated to the first floor of Miller on the Trowbridge side of the building, and so that you would have line of sight with people as they enter the building. Again, we would create an entrance where you would have to be buzzed in to the office before you would have access to the entire building. And then we'd also include some ADA compliance by adding an elevator at Miller. I'm not sure why Manning's isn't there, but Manning essentially is the same concept. On the front of the building would be the addition for Manning to create an entrance again that is on the first floor. That's at street level, so you have line of sight, so that you would have buzzed into the building and you wouldn't have free access to the building. Right now, the visitor entrance for Manning is on the back side of the building, which is the alley side. That creates some safety issues for us. All the buildings as well, in addition to the entrances for the high school, Manning and Miller, and then enclosing the classrooms at the high school and at the junior high. ADA compliant door handles as well. Many of our classrooms right now cannot be locked from the inside of the classroom. So again, if you're in a lockdown, a teacher has to have a key. They have to go to the outside of the classroom, lock it down. And in those types of situations with anxiety, it again could be a deterrent to getting that classroom locked down very quickly. And so we'll change those door handles so that they're ADA compliant. They can be locked with a push button from the inside of the classroom, and that will happen at Manning, Miller, the junior high, and the high school as well. Referendum stats, in the spring of 2014, we had a 22% yes vote. That was increased to 44% in the fall, and we attributed that to the feedback from spring of 2014 was that people didn't like the funding mechanism. We were looking at increasing the debt service extension base, and the feedback was that that was actually giving the board a blank check, and people weren't comfortable with that. So we changed the funding mechanism to more of a traditional bond issuance. It was $26 million, and the feedback after that referendum failed was that the dollar amount was high for taxpayers, and then also they wanted a more narrow focus. And so the board took that feedback, and so now in the spring of 2015, the projects have been scaled down to narrow the focus. The question we'll see in a moment is also narrowed to narrow that focus. And then at the, we've also made a commitment. We reduced the cost to $19.7 million, which if you add the total of those projects is slightly more than 19.7, because the district will be using some of its fund balance to address the door handles this summer, and that's regardless if the referendum is successful or not. We'll still move forward with that plan. The last time the board passed a referendum was in 1985, so it's been a significant number of years since we've had a successful referendum. So where do we go from here? And again, you know, the question is not whether or not these we should do the projects, but the question ultimately is when they will get done. And that ends up being a funding issue for the district. But all these are seen as needs for the district. They're not wants, but rather we think providing the safest environment for our students and then also the best educational environment for our students is what's in the best interest of our students and our community. In terms of other ways to accomplish this, as Kim, with her financial report to the board, the state, the budget, it's not working, and we're not receiving our payments or reimbursements in a timely fashion. And some years we haven't received all of our reimbursement from the state, and so waiting on the state to address these issues. Most recently, our own park district received a construction grant, and that's been put on hold with the new with the change with the governor's office. And so relying on the state, it's going to be a long time coming. I think the board administration, we've demonstrated fiscal responsibility over the last couple of years in terms of having a balanced budget. With the board passing the policies to guarantee a certain percentage of fund balance, that demonstrates that fiscal responsibility is the high priority. And you know, unfortunately, the only way that we can generate the funds that we need is through increasing the tax rate through the referendum and asking for the bond issuance. One of the things that we do know, though, that schools are a wise investment. And we have 3 quotes there, and I know they're difficult to read in here, but again, this is available on our website. But you know, definitely when you have strong schools, that makes it an attractive area for people to move into, to raise their family. It helps property values, and so definitely. And I think again, we demonstrate fiscal responsibility. You know, the trend in our schools is that. You know, we're improving, we're seeing gains in student achievement, and so definitely I think we're contributing positive property values. A couple of, again, these are frequently asked questions, and some of this is from our previous informational meetings, but there's always a question about the fund balance that the district has available, and at one time it was stated that we have a $7 million balance in our operation funds, and the reality is we have about a $2 million balance in our operation funds. But again, that's for all 5 of our buildings. It's to do repairs and maintain parking lots and boilers and all those things that we have to sometimes have unexpected costs. Next week, we're going to be replacing a chiller at the high school. It was anticipated that the chiller was going to be operational for another 4 to 5 years, but that's not the case. And so now this spring, we have to replace a chiller that we weren't anticipating. That's approximately about a $200,000 cost that was not budgeted for. And so if we don't have the fund balance, then that's a difficult repair to make for the district. That the referendum is paying for principals' offices. And again, what we need to do is create secure entrances for our students. And, you know, the principal is located in the main office. And so by default, you know, the principal's office does become part of the plan, but that's not the reason for it. It's, again, to create those secure entrances for our students. The district will receive millions of dollars from the village TIF fund. Cass Avenue, they created a TIF district, and there is an agreement with the school district, but unfortunately, not a lot is happening on Cass Avenue. And so the reality is, again, when that does happen, you know, that could be a number of years down the road that we actually start seeing significant dollars. To date, we've received about $1,500, and it was projected that we should have received almost $15,000. And so definitely that revenue stream is lagging. Another myth is that the board is lying, that there has not been a tax increase in 30 years. And again, it's, you know, what we communicate is that we haven't passed a referendum in 30 years. Property taxes are a function of new property, property values, tax rates, CPI. Those are the factors that determine the property taxes and ultimately what you pay. And so sometimes those things increase because of other factors that are occurring that are outside the control of the school district. And then our school district should set an example for our children by showing fiscal responsibility, by spending the school district's budget instead of asking homeowners. And again, I think over the last year, a couple of years, because we have had the balanced budget, I think we are demonstrating fiscal responsibility. Unfortunately, the cost of these projects go beyond what our operating budget can handle, and so that's why we need to ask the question of our taxpayers. The actual cost is approximately 73 cents a day on an average valued home of $250,000. Again, on our website, we do have a calculator, so if you know the value of your home, you can input the value of your home and get that cost. On an annual basis, it's about $266 a year. And for that, though, we're able to improve the ADA compliance of our buildings, the safety and security, and the educational environment. Another way to look at that is, you know, the typical Starbucks latte is about $3.75 a day, and then a large fry is $1.79. I know my vice is Diet Coke from McDonald's, and trust me, it's more than $1 a day that I spend on Diet Cokes at McDonald's. And so definitely we understand that it does impact people, but we're hoping that you know, it's not a significant impact, and people can make the adjustment. Another you know, thing that we had discussed at an earlier board meeting, and unfortunately Newtown had the tragedy of the school shooting, and it was a tragic event. And some of the families that lost children during that school shooting, they actually now have filed suit against the school district and also the town, the community. And what they're citing is a lack of security at the school. And one of the situations that they encountered, one of the things that they've learned about school shootings in general is that typically the shooter knows that they have a finite amount of time. And so their goal is to create as much destruction as they can in that finite amount of time. And so even a locked door, sometimes as a deterrent, they'll move on to the next classroom. They keep moving on until they can find easy access. One of the classrooms, there was a substitute teacher. The classroom had to be locked down with a key. The substitute teacher didn't have a key at the time. And so that was one of the classrooms that the shooter was able to get into, and unfortunately, those students lost their lives. And so, definitely, and that's what the parents are citing. And then also, because they don't feel like the community support the school district enough in allowing for some of those safety measures to take place, they're suing the community as well. The question itself is, shall the Board of Education of Westmont Community Unit School District number 201, DuPage County, Illinois, approve the sites and safety and security of and alter, repair, and equip the Manning and Miller Elementary and Westmont Junior High and High School buildings and issue bonds of said school district to the amount of $19.7 million for the purpose of paying costs thereof. And again, the question locks in, first of all, those dollars can only be used at those 4 schools. You can't use dollars at South because of the way that the question is written. And again, it has to go through to those school improvements. You can't use it for teacher salaries, but they have to go to the improvement, repair, and equipment of our buildings. We have a quick video, and normally there's music, but there's not music this evening, but you can still view a quick video that, again, just helps to illustrate some of the issues with our schools and what we're hoping to accomplish. And the video kind of gives you an idea of what the open spaces look like in each of the buildings, and then also how the entrances work for our buildings. And you do have to get buzzed in. We don't want to give the impression that you don't get buzzed in. You do get buzzed into the buildings. But the issue is once you're inside the building, you pretty much can go upstairs, downstairs. You have free reign of the building. And so we want to change how that works. And it's modeled after our junior high, where if you're familiar with the junior high, you get buzzed into the vestibule, and the only place that you can go is into the office. And somebody has to check you in and find out your reason for being there before you're allowed to move throughout the building. We did have informational meetings at the high school on the 11th, and then we also had, on the 18th, we had a meeting at Manning and at Miller, and that also allowed for building tours. And so that's, as it's said in the video, the question is on the ballot for the April 7th election. And so, the hope is that we can share information. We can't tell people how to vote, but the election is on April 7th.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a couple of questions, Kevin? Just two things that had come up. Can you just address for a moment the windows and the safety glazing on the windows, that issue, that is part of the plan?
Right. Part of the plan is as well on the first floor of Manning, Miller, the junior high and high school. A glazing will be applied to the doors and to the windows. It won't make the glass bulletproof, but it does make it shatter resistant. So again, it slows somebody down. So it takes that much longer for somebody to gain access that way. That was accomplished at South when we did the changes at South with the early childhood and with the district office. But that would be part of that plan as well.
Then I have one other quick question. So I know I've been fielding some questions, and there's been some concerns about the funding for this. And the question has been, can the district set aside this type of a fund balance to do these kind of projects? The questions come up about living within our means and such things like that, and setting aside money for these type of projects. You did speak to the fact that we do have our budget of $2 million. So I'm going to ask two questions. Could you speak just a little bit about one of the things that you talked about at the Manning presentation, about that our business is service-based, and then,
Sure.
Maybe if I can ask Ms. Anderson to just talk about that amount of fund balance that we have, sure. if I can.
And the question was, and then I'll turn it over to Kim. The question was, it's a school district's choice how they spend their dollars. You can, if you choose to, you can spend them towards these improvements rather than asking the taxpayers. And obviously there is some truth to that, but the reality is that schools and school districts, we provide a service to educate students. We don't produce a product. And so when you're a service organization, your primary expenditure is personnel. And so anytime you talk about reducing expenditures in order to spend dollars in another area, essentially for schools that means reducing staff. And so you're either reducing your certified staff, your non-certified staff, and that ultimately impacts the quality of education for our students, because then you are either increasing class sizes, or you're reducing programs, or you're eliminating co-curriculars. But there's only so many ways that you can look at it to reduce expenditures when you're in the business of educating students. And so it does become very difficult to make the amount of cuts that you would need in order to have the revenue necessary for the building improvements that we're talking about. There would be significant reductions, and the district would not look the same. So that ends up being problematic. Kim, if you want to.
Well, and then the other thing is, funds, school districts, there are certain funds, and certain funds, you can have certain types of expenses out of each type of fund. So the educational fund is where we have the majority of our dollars, and that goes for educating students. That's, again, teachers' salaries, those types of things, operating the district textbooks, supplies, all those things. Then we have our O&M fund, which is the levy that we do for operating our buildings. So it's the utilities, the custodian salaries, all the supplies. It's the trucks and the gas for the trucks, and maintaining our fields and our lawns and all those things. And so that levy currently is just a little over $2 million. And the tax and our levies in our ed fund and our O&M fund there's a limit to what those tax rates can be. And the limit to the tax rate for the O&M fund is 75 cents. We're somewhere around 53, 54 cents right now. And so we can't exceed that 75-cent rate by law. So even if we took our rate up to the 75 cents, that'd be about an additional 20 cents from where we're at, and that would be roughly $850,000 to $900,000 a year. So if you have, $19, $20 million worth of projects and you increased your levy each year by that amount, that's still going to take you over 22 years to be able to accumulate enough funds to be able to do these projects out of your operational budget. And then the other thing is that $900,000 has to come from somewhere else. So you have to reduce your levy in one of your other funds. So again, what programs, what things do we want to cut to make that happen? The other thing, and we do have, and again, if let's just say, even looking at it this way, we have a $2 million levy. Let's say we used 100% of that levy for these projects. That's still going to take you 10 years, but you can't use 100% of your levy because you need to be able to operate your buildings currently. So, and then the other thing is, if taxpayers really, only want you to levy the money that you need. And so if you start having excess accumulation, then the district receives tax objections to your levy. So there's a lot of different things to take into consideration with this. And so, it really is not feasible to be able to do these types of projects out of the current budget.
Thank you. I know what I can speak to, and I know what I can't, and I thank you for giving that information about the financial piece of it. So do any other board members have any comments or questions before we? No. Okay. Thank you very much.
Let's go. Sure.
Then the next item on the agenda is the PLC update.
All right. And we thank the board for the opportunity to provide a PLC update. And I'm going to start the presentation, but then each of the building administrators will share information that's more specific to their building. And I know we have some parents here who are interested about the topic as well. And the one thing before I get into the presentation for the parents, we're obviously presenting for a broad audience, and so if there's a specific question that's not answered for you, the administrative team, we're happy to meet with individuals. If you have an individual question that maybe is a little bit more narrow and focused, we'll be happy to meet with you and discuss that with you. But what I want to begin with is, because this is our third year, is a little background, because I know even as a school community, sometimes we need to be reminded why we decided to go with professional learning communities in the first place, and why we decided that that's what we needed to do as a district. And first of all, the research is overwhelming in support of professional learning communities. And this is Milbury and McLaughlin. They did a 10-year study, looked at different schools, school districts, departments within schools, and any time that they saw highly effective schools that were meeting the needs of all students within the building. One of the common elements, there may have been other things happening within those schools, but one of the common elements is they had that opportunity to meet as professional learning communities in the collaboration. And not only that, but you see the initial improvement, but then you want to sustain that. And you want to sustain that progress and continue that progress happening. And so the sustainability also relies on the ability for that professional learning community and that collaboration. Michael Fullen is a well-known educational researcher. Again, in his research, he stresses the importance to improve schools. It's the collaboration that needs to happen in order to see that significant improvement that we're all hoping for. Fred Newman, again, another educational research, discusses the importance of having that collaborative culture and allowing individuals to work together in order to facilitate the implementation of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Eastwood and Lewis is another pair of researchers, and again, they cite that the single most important factor for a successful school is having collaborative cultures. And so definitely in our district, we wanted to change our culture, and so that's why we looked at the research, and that's why we wanted to pursue professional learning communities. And this should be familiar to everyone. This is our mission statement, and then also one of our belief statements. And when we initially came to the board with this, we talked about changing the culture. And even when you look at our mission statement, you have to change the mission statement. You have to change our belief statements. And you know, we can't just talk about educating and empowering students, but it's all students, regardless of those students and where if they come to us in kindergarten, early childhood, if they transfer to our school district, regardless of how they arrive to us, we're responsible for educating and empowering all those students. And that it's not just enough to say that we'll provide a high quality education, but we have to guarantee that all of our students will receive a high quality education. And then we have to ensure, again, guarantee that every student is a productive lifelong learning member of our global society. So, you know, one of the key components of a professional learning community is you have to make that commitment. You have to make that commitment to every student is guaranteed an education. There are three big ideas that the foundation of professional learning communities. Again, it's that constant theme of learning for all. And what changes is learning is constant, but the time and support is a variable. Well, the only way you can determine which students need additional time and which students need additional support is if teachers have an opportunity to meet in grade level teams, departmental teams, to look at student data, to see student achievement, to see where students are coming up short. That's how you identify which students need that additional time and support. It also, and we'll look at the 4 key questions for professional learning communities, it also works for the other side of the coin. Those students who, you know, you're looking at the data, they're already there. Well, those are students that need to be pushed, to need enrichment. And so that professional learning communities also address that. You have to have that culture of collaboration where professionals are able to meet and, again, to look at the curriculum, to look at assessment, to look at strategies. And this quote is from Rick Dufour, who was the superintendent for a number of years at Stevenson High School. And they're well known for their student success and then also professional learning communities. And then ultimately it comes down to results. You have to focus on the results. The 4 critical questions that a PLC is based upon is, first, as a grade level, as a building, as a department, you have to identify what it is we want kids to learn. And it seems like that's a relatively easy question, but I can tell you with the introduction of parks and the changing landscape, that has definitely changed that. And so teachers now need to look at the new standards and to identify what it is that students need to learn. We need to be able to know, how do we know when the students have learned the information, and that's through assessment. And then we have to be able to address the needs of students who, you know, aren't there yet. You know, they need, again, that additional time, additional support. But then we also need to know how we're going to respond to that student who's in our classroom that may already have met those standards. And so the focus on learning, and I know I've said this a number of times to the board, you know, what we want to be able to do, you know, I can walk into our buildings and I can guarantee you that teaching is taking place. The key is that learning is taking place. And so that's the environment we want. And I can tell you that today we're further along that continuum than we were when we first started with PLCs, that we're able to assure that in classrooms learning is taking place. And this gets to a little bit of the reason for the time. When implementing PLCs, again, you have to have that shift of teaching versus learning. And it's so easy to have a teacher-centered classroom. It's much more difficult to have a student-centered classroom. there has to be a shared vision, mission, and values, and I can assure you that in each of our schools, there is a shared mission. It's tied to the district mission. They have shared vision and values. SMART goals, that's part of the vocabulary, and teams of teachers are developing SMART goals, they're assessing the SMART goals, and then they are either raising the bar because they've met that goal, or they're having tough conversations about why we haven't met that SMART goal. Collaborative teams, that's the purpose of having PLCs, establishing essential outcomes. That's what do we want our students to know. The common assessments, so that we can have productive conversations within our PLCs. Taking a look at student data to drive our instruction, making that commitment to continuous school improvement, and then again, the results orientation. And again, it's that whole concept, and this is another quote from Rick DeFore, that we need to realize that our fundamental purpose is helping all students achieve at high levels, and that won't be accomplished if we have teachers working in isolation. So why the 1 hour release? Why did we adopt that model? First of all, it's collaboration, and all of our teachers have to be available. So if you do it before or after school, that becomes an issue for teachers who are sponsoring clubs, coaching athletics, or maybe in some cases have family responsibilities. It's an acknowledgement that our teachers are busy. You know, when the students leave the building, that doesn't mean that the workday stops for our teachers. Many of our teachers, you know, I know when I was at Manning, and it still occurs at South, but as early as I arrive, there's typically somebody who's there before me who's a teacher. As late as sometimes I leave, there's somebody who's still there who's a teacher. They're doing work at home in the evening. They're doing work on the weekends. So, you know, teaching, it's hard work, and so our teachers are busy. It's an acknowledgement that our teachers have families, and just like all of us, you know, you might want to coach your child's team. You know, you might want to be the leader for either your Girl Scout or Boy Scout troop. You know, you want to go see your students' activities, and then there's the responsibility of helping with homework. Well, our teachers have those same responsibilities. So when they're done working with the community's children, now they have their children when they get home, and so it's an acknowledgement of that. And then ultimately as well, to do it outside the contractual day does require bargaining and additional cost. And the reality is, when we look at that 1 hour a week, that ends up being 3.5% of the student day, so less than 4% of the student day. And so while there's an acknowledgement that yes, we're losing contact time, but as a result of our work that we're doing, we're more efficient, we're meeting the needs of our students, and so we're actually, it's not a hindrance to our students' achievement. And the other thing to be aware of as well is that you know, school improvement, it's a cycle, it's a continuous loop, and there is really no end point. There's always more work to do, and so it begins with initially identifying what it is that we want our students to know and be able to do, and then aligning those expectations and those standards with our curriculum, and then making sure that we're using best practices, and we know those standardized tests that we're held accountable for, developing our SMART goals, having our students, making sure that we're student-centered with our SMART goals and they're measurable, developing our learning standards and assessments, implementing assessments, analyzing the student achievement, refining our assessments and instruction, and then we start repeating the sequence again. And so that time is valuable for us to work through that cycle. Again, that was just kind of a quick overview of why we adopted the PLC model, the research behind it, and what we need to have in place. But to get into more of the qualitative and qualitative data for each of the buildings, each of the building administration will come forward and share their PLC story.
Thanks, Mr. Carey, and thank you, Board of Education, for having us here tonight. pretty excited to share a little bit about what's been going on at Westmont Junior High School and through the district as well. But first, before I get started, I do want to plug that I'm sure that there's hundreds of thousands of people that are watching us right now. I want you to hit the record button, and I want you to leave, not because this isn't going to be an amazing presentation, but because over at Pompeii right now, we're having our P3, so our Pompeii Poetry Party, and it's our second annual open mic night from our literacy teachers. It's going on right now at Pompeii, and it's till 8:30 tonight. So hit record, you'll see me later, okay? For everybody that's stuck here, I am excited to be here, and I wanted to talk a little bit about Pompeii because it is one of the authentic learning experiences that we have because of the PLCs that are going on. If it wasn't for the collaboration of teachers coming together, this is one thing that would be difficult to pull off. And there are more and more learning experiences that are going on like this on a regular basis at the junior high. So when we first looked at PLCs, as Mr. Carey said, I came to the district in 2012. That was my first year. And I was excited because the district that I had come from had started PLCs the year before. So I felt pretty solid in that. I had a solid foundation. Except the district that I came from did not have the commitment to PLCs that CUSD 201 had. It did not have that dismissal time, and it was very difficult in order to implement our PLCs. They're still having struggles to this point. And so they just had to find their faculty meeting time to try to develop those PLCs. So the first thing that we had to do as a junior high is figure out what PLCs meant to us. Because we're a different sort of animal than the elementaries. We have grade level teams, but then we also have departmental. And so when this isn't just unique to our school, but when we look at the three main purposes for us and what we were going to be doing, we looked at the curriculum development that needed to take place. We also needed to revise our curriculum maps over a period of time. This last year, we've been revising them, and the formative assessment creation is taking place as well. Now, we were able to create our curriculum maps last year, but because of all of the changes to the curriculum in the state and in the country, whether that's the ELA and the math Common Core, or whether that's next generation science standards, or the C3, and that's more of the social studies Common Core. Depending on what you look at, it's ever changing. Just like the ISAT has changed the last 3 years, and now we have the PARCC assessment. Just like the assessments have been changing, well, the curriculum has been changing as well. And in the case of math, the teaching practices have changed. I think that if any of us have children, we know that math teaching practices have changed as well. So we look at the data analysis as well. We're using MAP data for that. We're looking at Ames Web data for that, and multiple other data points. That analysis of that data takes time. And so it's that time that we have during PLCs that we're able to look at the data, we see what's going on, we look for trends, we try to determine what's going on in the data, what we're reading, and then we use it to inform and change our instruction to meet the needs of our students. So as well, the professional development opportunities are needed, and I'll go into that in a little bit. So the question is, how do we serve our students? And like I said before, we've got it broken down into two different sets of teams. And Mr. Carey had mentioned the two critical questions, and there's actually four. But it was by breaking us down into departmental teams that we started to answer the first two questions. So what is it that kids are expected to learn, and how will we know when they learned it? So for us, the junior high, we had to look at the curriculum first. We had to break down the curriculum, get into our groups, break down the curriculum, set up our exit outcomes, start writing the curriculum maps. All of this takes a great deal of time, and we have this obligation that I see at the junior high. Every single student that walks through our doors, they have a different set of needs. They have a different set of talents. And we need to meet that child where they're at, and we've got to deliver. We've got to help them, whether they're having struggles in reading or whether they're reading things that I've never read in my entire life. So we need to meet them where they're at, and we need to figure out how to just make them grow and progress, whatever level they come into us at. So as I stated before, the departments have the Next Generation Science Standards, the C3 framework that goes over the civics, college readiness, and then the ELA and the Math Common Core. So I'm going to break down just a little bit here of what our departments, how our departments are working, because we've taken the entire year of PLCs at the beginning of the year, and we determined, okay, we need some solid time for curriculum work. We need some solid time for our departments to meet. And we were very fortunate because of some ties that we have to NEA and Better Lesson. We have some ties to Teach Cycle. They were originally called UnPD, but now they're called Teach Cycle. And so we had an opportunity to take part in a pilot with Teach Cycle. So we had some just amazing coaching going on. We had an amazing process going on for our entire literacy team for free. We got to work with a virtual coach. So because I don't want to forget the process, I'm going to read that to you right now. The literacy teachers, they were able to meet with an expert Teach Cycle coach who joins the PLC meetings remotely. They also met with my teachers because PLC time was not enough, so they had to meet outside of the PLC time, which the teachers worked that out themselves, and in some other departmental times. So they would meet with this coach remotely via the Google Hangout, and together they were selecting teaching challenges based on rich, actionable areas of student growth. They tackle each challenge by engaging in an intuitive three-step process, which you saw right here, for structured experimentation focused on teaching, measuring success, reflecting, and then learning. So throughout the year, members of the team implemented reading strategies devoted to enhancing critical thinking skills in their classrooms. Now, at a certain point in the year, this was only supposed to take 4 months, but at a certain point in the year, they had contacted me. They're like, this is working fantastically. They wanted to continue it, and they wanted to use us as a reference for their model. And so some of our teachers continued, some of our literacy teachers continued. We did have one literacy teacher that went on a maternity leave, so we have an amazing substitute teacher in trying to fill those shoes right now. And then we have 2 teachers that are currently working with student teachers, and so they're working with them. But during that, they're using this process to implement change in their classrooms. So next is the Social Studies Department. And the Social Studies Department, along with the C3, as I stated before, the College Career and the Civic Life Framework Standards, they've started to implement this into their curriculum as well. They're taking the learning targets, they're spending more time on geography, and they're all 3 teachers, because we have 6 for literacy, the 3 teachers for social studies are meeting together. They've put more of an emphasis on current events, and then the writing aspects of ELA, so English Language Arts, they've been implementing as well. Something that not everybody might know is that our 6th grade has one-to-one Chromebooks assigned to them that they take to school, that they take home, that they come back and forth with. And they also have the opportunity to bring their own device to school to access our Wi-Fi signal as long as they were cleared. The 7th grade social studies teacher, this is his 2nd year of having one-to-one Chromebooks inside his class, but the Chromebooks stay inside the class. And then the 8th grade has been using quite a bit of BYOD as well, bring your own device. So they've been doing quite a bit with technology. And then just this year, as I stated before, we use this time, this PLC time, for professional development as well, and have people, specialists, come in. And we are very graced by having Roberta Shanist, who is a leader in the state of Illinois and in the nation as far as the C3 standards and reading standards. She's published, I believe it's 3 or 4 different books at this point. And because we have a connection, thank you, right there, Miss Rue. Because we have a connection, we were able to have her come in and to help work with our teachers. So just another fantastic opportunity for us. Math, as I stated before, anyone with a child knows that there's been a change to the curriculum, but there's been a change to the teaching practices of math as well. And so we have been, in the district as a whole, have been working with an outside consultant, Dr. Einfeld, to work with our teachers, to work with the implementation of the curriculum, to work on our teaching practices as well, and then inside our school, we're working specifically on exit tests for certain courses that we have. Those exit tests are not necessarily given at the very end of the school year. They might be broken down, but by the end of the school year, they should have been able to pass all of those classes. So that's like an exit outcome. Our special education, they meet about their caseloads, and they also have a STAR load as well, and some of you know about our STAR class. So they're continuing to meet and see that, because just about all of our special education teachers also teach either a math class or a literacy class, so they need to look at that map and AIMSweb data. They have to do the progress monitoring that takes place with that as well, and then they have to meet each child's IEP goals. And so that collaboration is important. Physical education and exploratory. The exploratory is also known as the fine arts, and this comes back down to curriculum mapping. They have made it one of their goals this year to integrate the English language arts, the ELA Common Core, into their classrooms as well. On top of that, they're able to work with the high school across the street. They got out a little bit earlier than we do, so they will come over and visit us. But it allows for the articulation between the two schools to take place as well. On top of that, and I'll go into this in a little more detail, I'm just talking about our departmental PLCs. We also have our data team PLCs, and that is something that our exploratory and physical education teachers work on as well. So science, if anybody was able to be there last night, it was pretty amazing. We had our second annual Family STEM Night. We had a full house, and there's pictures on our Facebook site. So by the way, when I talk about these authentic learning experiences that take all of this collaboration, please go on to the Westmont Junior High School Facebook site. I'm seeing some people out in the audience right here, and I know I've seen you like certain things. Specifically, I know you. I saw you like something recently. But you'll be able to see that we just had Family STEM Night. We had fathers and mothers and students working together to problem solve, and it was using technology as well, because we've brought in, I believe it was a 12 iPads in which the teachers, I know that my 3-year-old and my 5-year-old know how to use an iPad, but when you're talking about using them for science classrooms and what that means, you really need to know what you're doing. And so we have some professional development that's tied to the technology that we're bringing in, and then those enrichment in the STEM opportunities. The state of Illinois last year in January, the Illinois State Board of Education adopted the Next Generation Science Standards, but as far as expecting them to be fully implemented, the state has not set that up yet. So as I said, technology is huge at my school. We have bring your own device. We have one-to-one. Next year, we're going to expand. As far as I know, we're going to expand the one-to-one Chromebook initiative that we have. And so besides bring your own device, besides the computer lab that we have, besides the Chromebooks that we have, this is a way of life for us. And keeping on target and keeping up to date with the changing technology and how we can implement that into our classroom and help push the curriculum forward. So that is just a tool, okay? It is not another thing that's just thrown out there. It is a way for us to enhance the learning experiences for our students. And so once again, technology, that's going to take some time for some training as well. So the last two critical questions of a PLC, so how will we respond if they don't learn, and how will we respond if they already know? So So what that brings me to, and I know the Board of Education is well aware of our E period and our intervention time and the differentiation. We have an instructional coach. Thank you, Board of Education and Westmont, for backing us up on that. So we have this intervention time. We would not have been able to do that again if we did not have PLCs. Having interventions, having that PLC time to come together to look at the data, because we are continually progress monitoring those students that are not currently at grade level. We are looking at their data. We're trying to determine how we need to intervene, put them in intervention so that they'll be able to move along. And many of our math students this year have moved outside of the math intervention and into the regular classroom. Now, we still have the STAR program, which is going to help monitor those students, and so that they'll be able to be, fully in math and going into our enrichment classes. So the idea with the enrichment piece or the E period is if you are coming to us and you need some extra help in reading or math, that time, that E period at 8:20 to 8:55, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, that's when you're going to get that extra help in reteaching and reading and math. If you already have that, and once again, how are we going to respond if you already have that? Then you're going to be able to go into enrichment, and we have 15-day mini units. And I know the board knows about this again, but these mini units are creative to what the passions are of the students, of the teachers, of the community members. We have many community members that are part of that. There's also on the RTI, the response to intervention spectrum, I guess you would call it, there's also the behavioral piece. And with the behavioral piece, it's the social emotional learning standards that we need to address. And so we have our Rachel's Challenge. We have another group that's Rachel's Challenge, and we talk about the difficulties in being a teenager. So there's quite a lot of opportunities there for the deeper learning. We have Genius Hour. Certain students have already put on their own E period classes, and then they've done presentations for Genius Hour as well. The goal setting, and that comes to this chart. Students are responsible for tracking their own data as well and setting up their goals. If you have a student, you probably know about this. I'm not going to go into all of that time, but once again, all of these things, they do take time. And I do not believe they would be nearly as successful as we are right now if we did not have that PLC time. So PLCs are linked to our school improvement days. And so why is that? Because, an hour after school, sometimes you're just getting into the conversation. And so for a huge data review, so a lot of our parents know that, I believe it's at grade 2, that there's a map test and the Ames Web that is done at the benchmarking period. So we have that in the fall, in the winter, and the spring. And so it is that data, that benchmarking data that we take and that we look at, that we analyze, that we move students in and out of interventions, and we determine if we have the right intervention in place to fit that student's need. So that is a crucial time. So this last February SIP, our 6th and 7th grade teams were analyzing that data. They were looking at their SMART goals, which I'll share with you in just a moment. And then they were identifying the movement of those students. Now, you notice I kept out the 8th grade. The 8th grade during that period of time in February, they were meeting with Mr. Bellerman's the high school, the 9th grade team. That was the articulation, which is extremely important to see that success for those students to move up. And the course recommendations were taking place there, setting up those students for success. Now, the 8th grade, because they missed out on that time, it took multiple times for them to meet during the school day, and then also on top of that during PLC, in which we really needed to be doing some other things, but they need to go through the data review process. It was tough, and so they're a little backlogged right now. But spring break's around the corner, right? With the data review, this is just a template, and I believe all the schools work with Tiffany Therese, and Tiffany is fantastic. She's one of our SASID coaches. She's been working with us since before I got there, and developing a plan, and this is the data review and helps move us forward. So this is our SMART goal for 6th grade. We have a SMART goal for our school, and that is really tied not to the ISAT, because as I told you before, the ISAT changed the last 3 years. Now we have the park. So we decided to tie that to MAP or MAZE. And so the teachers or the teams knew, the grade level teams, because now I'm going into a different PLC, the grade level teams know that they need to show some movement, some progress. And so usually it's 2 percentage points is what is considered agreeable or what you would expect as far as progress. So the 6th grade was looking for an increase of 3%, and you can see there that they not only met their goal, but they exceeded their goal, and instead of 3%, they ended up having a 10.1% increase. Next, we go to 7th grade. In the 7th grade, which was a team that met their goal last year, they did not meet their goal this year. They were looking for a decrease in that lower range of the low and low average range for informational text, and they did not meet their goal, and I'm going to go more into this on a later slide. Next is our 8th grade, and they were looking to have a reduction from 26% to 23% in that low and low average in the math writ range, and they ended up meeting that goal, not only meeting it, but instead of the 3%, but they had a reduction by 8%. And I believe these are going to be made available, the slides are going to be made available online as well. So let's talk about the data review. The data review deals with the data that we have of our students, and these are supposed to be highlighted. Let me grab something here. So to give you an idea, I grabbed the norms from the MAP NWEA website, and so at the end of the spring for a 6th grader in reading, the norm is a 216. So you can see in 2011, 2012, they were leaving the spring with a 216. The norm is still a 216, but you can see in 2012 and 13, they have a 219 and then a 221. For math, 225 is the norm to leave in the spring. You can see there they had a 228, 229, 229. On the next page, we have the 7th grade. And 7th grade to leave, once again, I'm going to leave for reading, is a 219 is the norm. You can see 224, 222, 223, so staying right in that area there. The norm for the math for 7th grade is a 230, so you can see 237, 232, 236. So once again, we are above the norms of all middle schools of the age group to exit the 7th grade. Looking at the 8th grade, the norm for the 8th grade for spring is 224. We have a 227, 226, 226, so once again, staying pretty consistent there, all within one. And then for the math is 234, and you can see 235, 239, 236. So we are seeing a trend. Sometimes they're up and down a little bit, but there is a positive trend I see. So let's talk about the ISAT review. Even though we know that it's changing and now we have the park, let's take a look at that. And really, I just took out the district because last thing I know, we're the only junior high in the district. So I just took it out because it would have said the same as our school. So these are our scores, and for those that are looking and a little concerned about the cut score in 2012 to the cut score in 2013, they ended up changing the cut scores, not only changing the test in the last 3 years, but they changed the cut scores as well. And so you'll see there that steadily, and I'm going to kind of go through these quickly because you can take a look at the slides later from your own home, but what you'll see here is that we are in every aspect except for one area, which is the 7th grade reading during 2 years ago. We are above the state average. And then that's 7th grade science, which science is only done at the 7th grade level. And then the 8th grade again. So what this shows, and this chart shows the meets and exceeds, and then the below and warning. So this is all of this is found on IIRC. Everybody can access this data. So when I put it all together, and the 3-year average for reading, the 3-year average for meets and exceeds is we are consistently, are on average, I should say, 5.8% above the state norm, and we are 6.1% above in math, meets and exceeds. So let's put this in comparison to someone that's local. And when I look at, you can do comparable data with looking at Lyle Junior High and us. And the reason why I choose Lyle is because their demographics are extremely similar to our demographics, with just some slight differences. And it's a little shocking, to be honest with you. So if you take a look there, you can see that the 10 in 2010 all the way to 2014, and it was this past ISAT that we finally bumped up above Lyle Junior High School. So we're pretty excited about that. Next, we have the RCBM. So this is the Reading Curriculum-Based Measurement, and this data is for 6th grade. So you can see the fall is to the left, and then the winter is to the right. You see that they already, Manning and Miller, we definitely appreciate how you gave us those students because you did a heck of a job. They started off just very solid, so 87% established. And what you can see there, although it's very small, is that there was 1 percentage point moved from the red, which is deficient, to the emerging. So a positive trend, even if only 1 percentage point. You look at 7th grade, and you can see that established moves significantly from 76% to 83%. And then, I'm going backwards. And then in 8th grade, you can see that they moved from 56% in the fall to 74% in the winter. So with that, I told you I was going to revisit this from the 7th grade SMART goal. What happens when we don't get the results that we want? Because quite frankly, we don't always get the results that we want. And it's about, I think about the engineering process that I saw at the STEM meeting last night. It is about asking the question, looking at the data, doing the data analysis, reflecting upon that, trying a new strategy. And all of those things are what we do in PLCs, and all of those things take time. That time is sacred to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Just so you know, John, when we redo this, we're going to take out your little blip where you tell people to turn it off.
Absolutely. And there is one more thing. When we talk about data, we look at all points of data, and so for school climate, you all know that it's important to me. So for school climate, we do look at the 5 essentials, and I just want to say thank you, shout out to my parents, because we had 37% or higher possibly of parents respond to the 5 essentials, and I believe we beat Miller, so thank you very much.
Your turn.
Want to get our technology set so we don't have to worry about it later.
So you don't have to. Be really careful because this touches the touchpad and you can't move the mouse.
Okay.
Okay. So be careful that that doesn't touch. Okay.
Well, I'm Edith Rivera. I'm the principal at Miller's School.
And I'm Kristen Krestel, principal at Manning.
And the reason you see us up here together is because we have our teachers actually have PLCs together. And so half of the year, our teachers travel over to Manning for PLCs, and then they come to us for the remainder of the year. So first and foremost, thank you so much for allowing us to talk to you about our PLCs. We are very, very excited with what's been going on and the changes that have come from that time that they have together. It is precious, it is valued, and it is not taken for granted. That is for sure. As Mr. Carey was talking about, there are many changes to education, new standards, new assessment, which calls for, a change in curriculum, a change in, the old way. There has to be a new way in the way that, teachers used to do things. And I think that they're accepting that. And any profession that you are in, whether you are the CEO of a company or you're in the retail business or you are in the restaurant business, communication and collaboration are the key to success. Without that, an organization would just fail. And so, given the time, giving our teachers the time to be able to create these curriculum maps and to talk about standards is so important. I have been on board for 1.5 years, and so I can't speak as to the journey of how it all began. I have definitely heard about how it all began and how it all started, and so Mrs. Krestel will talk to you a little bit about that, and then we can move on into our presentation.
One of the tasks that Miller and Manning were presented with was bringing together our staff for the two buildings, and instead of being separate entities, coming together as one. So that took some time as well. We feel that it's necessary that students, whether they attend Miller or Manning, are reaching the same benchmarks and assessed the same way. As we're sending them off 6-12, they should be prepared equally.
Okay, so in listening to Mr. Jonak, it's very comforting to hear where our young 5th graders are going. It's always difficult for us to let them go, but knowing the amazing things that are happening at the junior high with the great work of the PLC is very reassuring. As you might expect, being in a K-12 district, pre-K 12 district, sorry, Mrs. Clouder, it's essential that we are speaking the same language. We wanted to start, the way that we envisioned us presenting today was just really focusing on those 4 critical questions that you've been listening to all evening. And so we want to start with, what is it that we expect our students to learn? That's a great question in itself. And those are the conversations our teachers are having. So they get together in grade levels, specialists will meet with each other, they collaborate, and they build that shared knowledge about state standards, about curriculum, about assessments, teaching practices, whatever it is that's on the docket for that day, those are the conversations that they're having. And so as you can see on the slide, we have a curriculum map. And so our teachers have been really focused on math curriculum mapping and planning for the whole year, and they are doing a phenomenal job. They leave those meetings and they feel refreshed. They feel a sense of accomplishment. They feel like they know where they're headed. And I mean, look at this curriculum map. It has content, it has learner standards, it has assessment. They talk about common assessments, common vocabulary. Being on the same page is key. We have a dual language program. We have parents now that have kids both at Miller and at Manning. And so it's essential that we're speaking the same language when we're talking about content and skills and outcomes. You know, what do we expect our students to know when they're at a certain grade level? And so teachers are focusing on comprehensive literacy model. We've had work with not only Dr. Einfeld for math as a math consultant, but we've also had Mrs. Christy Moore, who is an expert with comprehensive literacy model, which is a way that we're teaching reading. And so this is something else that our PLC, our reading specialists, came up with that then was disaggregated between all grade levels so that we're all on the same page. And so this is a flow chart that talks about what the model is and then the different components of it. And with each component that you see, assessment, writer's workshop, literacy workshop, interventions, and content workshop, those are all then professional development opportunities we've had to discuss each and every one of those. And so with that comes the mini lessons that they're going to teach, making sure that they're all teaching the same mini lessons, you know, figuring out what are mini lessons, even starting with that. So PLCs have provided us time to just get on the same page and develop all of these materials and all of these bullets that you see within this graph. I'm not going to go into detail because there's so much, but as Mr. Jonak said, it is posted on there for you to see. But within comprehensive literacy model, that is our literacy framework, and so students are a part of this for 90 minutes a day. Within that model, there's mini lessons, there's guided practice with a teacher, there's independent practice, and then there's that sharing and reflection. And so these are all conversations that the teachers have had during their time together. Something else that, this is just an example of an email that we sent to our staff in preparation for our work with math curriculum. So as you can see, we're setting the tone for that. We're also setting expectations for our teachers as far as what do you need to come to the meetings with? How are you going to be prepared to be able to then begin this work and really get to the point of it, get to the meat of it? Because 1 hour isn't a lot of time, and we want to make sure that it's valuable. So they're coming to us with their current assessments. They're coming to us with the Common Core standards. And as we're listening to our teachers talk nowadays, they're using those Common Core language, they're using the vocabulary and the language, and they're really excited about it. And I can tell you, last year, that wasn't the case. Last year, they were really nervous. They, the fear of the unknown, they just weren't sure, they didn't feel comfortable. And now it's completely different. They're feeling really confident with it. And I think it's because of the PLCs. I know it is. The second question that we're going to focus on is, how will we know when they have learned it? So as the teachers are presenting material, how are we going to know if the students are really getting it or not? What are we going to put in place? So during professional learning communities, teachers have developed a common understanding about what characterizes student performance that is proficient and student performance that is not proficient. So one of our goals was to start creating common assessments. Now, kindergarten, they are the model PLC, because they actually had a little bit more time in the summer when we went to a full-day kindergarten. All of their assessments are standards-based for reading and for math. So they literally have a checklist per quarter that they go and they run through to make sure that the students are, meeting those Common Core standards. And so our work has been based off of that because it's been so successful. And so if you can look on the screen, we have a 5th grade volume test. We have a 5th grade common assessment. So what they do during their math time for PLCs and ELA, this is just a math example, is that they get together, they bring their resources. So they're studying, a certain unit. Teachers are bringing all of their materials, and they're talking about the different questions, and they're saying, okay, which questions do you feel are going to address these Common Core standards? And they're literally copying and pasting to make sure that they create an assessment that's useful for them, that's going to hit those standards, and that's going to give them the information that they need. And so this is what you can see here. This is just one of the many assessments that they have created during their time together. And then if you can see, there's also the assessments, the probes by standard, by quarter. So whatever's blocked out, that means that they don't assess it that quarter, but it's right there ready for next quarter to be assessed. And it spells out every single standard, which is pretty phenomenal. I mean, they're not missing anything. I think this is for you. Something else that I would like to mention is, in addition to us having PLCs and us taking the time to look at data, look at the MAP reports, because when we're looking at MAP and Ames web data, we're looking at it as a grade level with combined, like Miller-Manning combined. And so obviously then we go back to our buildings and we pull our own data and we say, this doesn't look the same. And so even within our own buildings, we're taking it a step further. And we're having our own PLCs. So teachers are meeting at 7:30 in the morning, and teachers are meeting after school to have those discussions about the kids and about what we're going to do in our own building to fix it, what we're going to do in our own building if kids aren't mastering the standard, or if they're not understanding the content, or which interventions they're going to have to be a part of. Those conversations interventions are happening as well, which I think is really key. Yes, we're doing this together, but we're also focusing on our own buildings and our needs, because it's a few blocks away, but the demographics are completely different. And so we do that as well.
Okay, when we talk about how do we respond when students don't learn, this graphic that you see up here is similar to the one that Mr. Jonak showed you. These are our timetables that we created with Tiffany from SACID, kind of outlines our dates, our benchmarking reviews. We have midpoint progress reviews, and this is looking at data and how we're addressing things not only through our PLCs, but also in our individual buildings for our individual students. Sorry. Some of the other things that we talk about during PLC time is creating systems of interventions, and also, you know, are we able to address the needs of our students? Those needs change, and we need to move kids in and out of interventions. We analyze data, looking at specific items, applying results to practice. Differentiate instruction, setting SMART goals, and targeting those specific skills within the classroom. We discuss reading and math instruction. We shared strategies and materials. We discuss current programming and changes that are needed to meet the needs of our students and also to meet the needs of the rigor of the Common Core. Modified assessments. We discuss those pre- and post-assessment data points. And so much of this couldn't be done without that time that we have. We don't have collaborative time, even within our own buildings with our teachers, let alone between the two buildings. So there's a lot of time that's spent doing this, and it does roll over into our SIP days as well. Technology integration, though we aren't near where the junior high is, we did pilot the 5th grade Chromebooks this year, and we are bringing more stuff in with the younger students as well. We target specific skills with leveled materials and also with the help of our instructional coaches, thank you, working with flexible groupings within the classrooms and how that looks. Did you say it's after that we do it? Okay. So the next question is, how do we respond when they already know it? This would be our enrichment. And we'll have a little video clip here for you to look at from a kindergarten PLC meeting. We create systems of enrichment. We analyze data. Again, we're looking at that, you know, those data points reflecting assistance from our instructional coaches. Again, how can we make that look in the classroom to enrich it for our students? We're applying results to practice, differentiating that instruction, and setting our SMART goals, targeting those specific skills on both ends. We discuss reading and math instruction strategies, and sometimes even with our older students, we're reaching into the junior high with that as well. We have discussions of our current programming and how we need to change that to meet the demands of our students in our curriculum. We modify those assessments so that they're current and across both buildings, and that we're able to pull those data points and discuss that assessment data, and again, that technology integration that we have.
So this is an example of a kindergarten team. We can figure this out. Oh. Oh, okay. Okay, okay, thank you. So this is an example of a kindergarten PLC meeting. The purpose of this meeting was for them to, they had originally set goals, so at each benchmark, so winter, fall, winter, and spring. As you remember seeing that chart that Mrs. Crestel pulled up with the different data dates that we go over. So teachers set goals, they look at their data, they analyze the data, and then based off of that data, they set grade level team goals, whether that be in reading or math or both. This happens to be a follow-up to one of those meetings where the focus is them talking about their goal and have they achieved it and, kind of what's the plan thereafter. Our teams do have different roles within their PLC. So Mr. Workema is a facilitator, and then Ms. Perino would be the note taker. And then, so you'll kind of see that as part of the role as well, but we thought we'd share a little 2-minute video of what that looks like and kind of bring you into our PLC.
Next benchmark, what goals would we like to achieve as a grade level using their data as reviewed. So the goal we made was by spring benchmark, 80% of kindergarten students will meet or exceeds the Ames Web target score of 28 on nonsense word fluency. I've been trying to work on that a lot, just going, fluent. Okay, let's, it, but it's like C or something. And they've been getting a lot better. They've even stopped sounding out. They're just like kit, or the ones who used to like chop it out are like kit. So they're faster and they're actually blending. And I think that's the best goal we can. I think we should keep that goal, just because it's a really good one for identifying letter names, sounds, and then blending them together. So I don't know. Have you guys been?
Well, and that's the assessment that's going to show
the most
growth. It's going to improve reading success. Yeah, right. So, I think we should keep it.
Keep it? I like it. All right, step 5, developing an action plan. So we have the individual students. We're just really worrying about the ones that are on the edge, but obviously we still want the ones who have achieved the goal to keep improving, especially with nonsense words, because you can always get better. And I've been trying to start adding, not just CVC words, but more for my ones who just really get it. We agreed to do the following between now and spring benchmark. So we've said manipulate sounds with dice, flashcards, magnetic letters, utilize literacy websites, individualized instruction. The only thing I found that's new is I gave you guys the tumble books. Besides that, I've really just been using Starfall, things like that. And Bookflix, that's been amazing, so thank you guys. Let's see, manipulating sound with dice, flashcards. I've been using that a lot on the smartboard, just because it's a great tool and it gets them up and at them. I've been starting to do that as part of my daily 5, so I'll just be like, I want you and you to go up and tap the board and write down the nonsense words that come up, because that gets them up and moving, and it's not too loud as long as it's just 2 people.
I also have the movement sounds. I would say too. They know them. So they get moving and they also get to do that reviewing of letters and sounds.
Exactly. How often we do this? Daily. Hourly. Every second. What materials will we need? Magnetic letters, flashcards, technology. We already have access to all those, which is great. Anything we think we could add?
even in your word work center, you can put cards where they have to make up nonsense words for other kids to read. And
That's
read them.
I have included the sandbox, the sand in those, what's it supposed to type boxes?
Yeah.
So then we got those type boxes in those, and also the baggies with the paint, with Q-tips, so they can form the letters. So that's great.
I use blocks, so it's like,
When they do data review meetings, all of our teachers are using, kind of have a step-by-step, I don't want to say it's a script, but it's a script that they follow, and they record their information. And this is what's turned back into them. So this is what Mr. Workema was referring to. And then also, going all the way to the steps of creating their action plan. And they receive these back at the next benchmark to see if they have met those goals. And we put just kind of a sample up here that we pulled up. It's not real easy to read, but they are 3 pages.
Something else that I think answers this question, how will we respond when they already know it? And something that I think we're really proud of is our work that we've been doing, like I said, comprehensive literacy model. That naturally lends itself to differentiation because, while the kids are, the management system is daily 5, where they're being exposed to literature, reading, writing throughout, the time when the teachers are meeting with the kids, and they're meeting with the kids according to their reading level. So it's differentiated naturally. And now we're doing the same thing for math. And so the kids are taught a lesson whole group. They're going off into math workshops. and then the teachers are pulling them back in to work with them at their level. So naturally, we're taking care of this question within what we're embedding into our instruction on a daily basis. And so as teachers are collaborating and communicating, that's what they're talking about. What are you doing with, your lower performing group? What strategies do you suggest? I have a student, that's struggling with number sense. What do you suggest? Our math interventionists have compiled during PLCs big crates that go by Common Core standard that has differentiated work for all levels, low, medium, high. Teachers can go access that for their centers, for their groupings, and that's all there ready for them. So when math interventionists are meeting, those are the conversations they're having. Those are the materials they're supplying for our teachers. Physical education, music, PE, vital. How can you help us with our curriculum? Kindergartners are learning to skip count. Can you do that while they're doing your warm-ups? So having those collaborations, even with a special area teachers, is important to give them an idea of what we're doing and how they can support us. Okay, Miller data. All right, so I pulled Ames, MAP, and ISAT data for you. If you look at Ames Web, we do this benchmark 3 times a year. This is kindergarten on my left side, and then first grade on the right side. These triangles, ideally, in their response to intervention world, should be 80% green, 15% yellow, and then 5% in the red. However, this is a measure that we use. It's a universal screener. And so all of our students take this assessment as a way for us within our buildings to gauge who needs what, who needs that support. So it's really a way to red flag our students and be able to provide those interventions. And looking at the kindergarten data, I pulled the sound fluency, and I wanted to focus on winter benchmarks for all the grade levels because we're not done with spring yet. But really, the kindergarten graphs, look pretty decent. I'm going to tell you this, and so in winter, our students, our kindergarten students, something happens, like right before winter break, they come back and they soar, and they come back and they're readers all of a sudden. When that happens, our benchmarks, this is what we've noticed. Our data benchmarks for Ames Web for letter sound fluency tends to drop a little bit. So in that little 5-year-old brain, they're not really, it's not as automatic. Those letter sounds and names aren't as automatic because now they're reading. Now they're learning to read. And so we really, as kindergarten teachers and just as a school, we aren't too concerned if it drops a little bit because at that point, we're benchmarking them using a Fontes and Pinnell kit that measures actual reading of books. And that's measuring the comprehension. And so at that point, in the winter, we're adding more components to their literacy. And so, that drop is expected, I guess you could say. I feel pretty confident saying that because we're moving on to bigger and better things. In first grade, let me turn to my first grade one. So as you can see, we have overall the green has increased by 13 percentage points. The yellow has decreased by 20 points, and I'm looking from 2012 to 2015. And then the red did increase a little bit to those kids needing a little bit more support in that grade level. And again, it all depends on the grade level coming in and the population that you have that year. CBM, at this point, they are reading passages, and we're taking into consideration their fluency, and with that, this is helping us to red flag those kids that might need a little bit more support, who might need to be pulled for reading intervention with Mr. Wolf and Ms. Pyatek. But overall, you can see that our students meeting and exceeding benchmarks is growing. In second grade, For the Ames Web data, you see that there is a growth in the green, so the green triangle is getting larger. There's an increase in that. The yellow is a little bit smaller, and then the red is a little bit higher. So I think we're making up with that yellow being smaller and adding maybe a few more in that tier. And Miller, it's one student can change the data dramatically because our enrollment is so low. And so it does make a big difference. But with the map data, which doesn't show up here very well, but okay, well, with our map data in second grade, and I think our map data overall and in general, I think I'll speak to that at the end, because I think as far as the numbers, everything will be in the PowerPoint. I don't think you can read it anyway. But what I can tell you about the map data is that we're seeing a trend where even though the stakes are getting higher and the map test is changing to align to Common Core standards, we are keeping up with it. So we're staying afloat, we're not dropping, we're maintaining, where we should be. And so that was really nice to see. I do have numbers as far as, kids moving from second to third to fourth grade and how they're starting off higher each year for every grade level, which was really nice to see. Third grade Ames Web data. If you can see the third grade Ames Web data, you can also see the triangles naturally moving more to that 80%, which is what we're gearing towards, 80, 15, and 5%. So there's an increase. There's been an increase of 11.7 for the green, increase in the yellow 3.8, but then a decrease of 15.5 in the red. So where you can see in 2012 where there was a large number at that like 10 to 20 percentile rank, now it's completely decreased and it's almost, you can't even really see it. So that's pretty amazing in third grade. Fourth grade looks very similar to third grade as well. We're seeing that number of students meeting or exceeding standards in the green, each year growing a bit, while the other areas are decreasing. Fifth grade. Fifth grade is, as far as the Ames Web, doesn't look as great, but when you're looking at the MAP scores, it's showing, it's also, keeping afloat with the state standards, like I said, and it's also showing gains as far as them with MAP. And MAP is really when you're looking at an assessment and really looking at the comprehension piece, we're looking at, the MAP data and then the Ames Web. Like I said, it is a factor, but it's more to identify our students in need. ISAT scores for third grade. We have seen a dramatic increase in the area of math. I mean, we're up 14 points, and in reading, we were up 1. That really means a lot, and it means a lot to the teachers because last time they took ISAT, it was all aligned to the Common Core. And like I told you before, they were really anxious and nervous about that. And so the fact that we didn't drop, the fact that we went up was such, it just speaks volumes to what they've been able to accomplish. And I'm certain that it's because of the time they've had together to collaborate. So we went up a point in reading, and then in math, we went up 14 points. Sorry?
Where is it that you went up a point in reading? Previous 70.
71.
70 to 7.
So for grade 4 for ISAT, and looking at the different years, so it has 2012, 13, and 14, and if I'm just looking at the 12, 13 to 13, 14 school years, again, in reading, we went up 11 points, and in math, we went up 20. So that's pretty amazing. And then in 5th grade, looking at the reading and looking at the math, we dropped 1 percentage point, and then in math, we went up 20 points. And so, again, like I said, just the fact that we didn't drop much more than this is pretty phenomenal. And then something that we're really proud of is that, the year prior we were top 28% according to the Sun-Times, and just last year we are now top 12% of the state. And so teachers are working really, really hard, and I couldn't be prouder. So thank you.
Okay, talking about the Manning data, we'll start with MAP. And when we're looking at MAP data here for second grade, the reading norms at the end of second grade, they should be coming in at a 189.6. And you can see even as far back as 2011-12 school year, we were at 199. Our percent of growth is shown in the last column. And for this year, we're on target at 8.7 in reading. And our math scores at the end of second grade should be a 191.3. So we're finishing above the recommended score. Grade 3 for reading, we should be ending at a 199.2. We're well above that in the 200s. And in math, we should be at a 203.1. And you can see we're above that as well. Even our winter benchmark is above that. Fourth grade reading should be ending the year in the spring at a 206.7. Last year we finished at a 218. And our math should be finishing at a 212.5. We're at 223 at the end of last year. So we're making growth every year from fall to spring. We're not falling back. And in fifth grade, our reading end of the year should be a 212.3. We were at a 219, 220, sitting right around there. And math should be a 221. And we're sitting anywhere between a 235 and a 226. One thing also to note is that this MAP test has changed. The standards have changed to be realigned with the Common Core. So I believe we are 2 or 3 versions into the test at this point. So things have changed too, which changes some of those scores a little bit. This graph here represents our ISAT assessments. And again, the state changed the cut scores in 13 and again in 14. And on the bottom, I just wanted to show, it looks like we're really high from, 05 all the way through 12, sitting in the, 90th percentile. And then all of a sudden we dropped to 78th percentile and 77th percentile. In 2012, we were 5.6% higher than the district average at Manning, 14.6 higher percent than the state. In 2013, with the change in cut scores, we were 13% higher than the district average and 32.2% higher than the state average. And then in 2014, with that 100% Common Core integration, we were 10% higher than the district average and 31% higher than the state average. So even though the numbers may look like we've dropped a lot, I think it's important to look and see where the state is at and where we still fall within that. This slide here is a comparison of Manning, Miller, and also Marker, grades 3, 4, 5. And the reason why I put this up here showing the difference between Manning and Miller is with 13 and 14, I think it's important to note where our composite score percentage for Miller, if you see how much closer we've come together between Miller and Manning, I think that's really important to note. And I believe all that to be through the collaboration of our PLC time that our teachers have had to work together. This is our Ames Web data for this year, showing that those triangles, again, that the ideal would be the 80, 15, 5. We are moving towards that. Some of our grade levels, our first grade jumped from the 62.2 in the green to 79.1. That would be up in the top left-hand corner. Second grade, again, we had an increase from 67.1 to 75.8 in the green. So we're working towards the 80%. Third grade was 66.6, went up to 71.7. Fourth grade, we saw a little bit of a dip. We went from 76% to 73%. So we're working interventions in that. And fifth grade, we had 85th and 84%. So I think our data looks good. I think it's showing improvements in our classrooms. Obviously, that little bit of dip in fourth grade, teams working towards creating goals to meet the needs of those students as well.
Thank you.
Enter, we'll go to the next one. Hi, everybody. I'm going to be pretty succinct here. I really appreciate the detail my colleagues went into. Very insightful and very helpful. I'll also say there's a couple of handouts for anybody who's interested. There's a few pages of research that I'm not going to cite right now that's available in handout form that talks about the power of professional learning communities. It's extensive. There's a mountain of research that says the PLCs are our way to go, so that'll be available. There's also our, what we call our brag sheet, which is details all the data to support the claim of us being the most improved high school in Illinois in 2014. I'm not gonna go over all that right now, just some of it. Before I do that though, I wanna say, I think it's so healthy, and one of the most important things that we would ask our students to learn is to be a critical thinker and to ask tough questions. That's one of the priorities in our learning process. So when a parent says, why PLCs, I think they're asking the right question. And we better be ready to respond in why, and with good reason. Why are we taking instructional time away from our students? We better have those reasons. But I think we do. I think you've seen some of that already tonight. I want to add to the information we've presented. So I think that's a crucial part of a strong school community, that people ask tough questions. At the same time, when there's a district or schools that are on fire, it's essential that parents get behind that. And that's where I believe that we're at right now. So to the question, how do we know? Because here's another thing that I've learned about PLCs. People can meet all day long and it can result in nothing. Has anybody ever been to a meeting that you really question what was the purpose? Okay, so you're not alone. You can meet all day long and be sincere and have good intentions. But the key in PLCs, as we've seen, is can you produce results? So that's what we want to talk about. So first of all, let's look pre and post PLC in the crucial areas. And we have SMART goals also. We also have BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. So prior to PLCs being implemented, our graduation rate was 87%. That's about the state average. And in fairness, in the 10 years previous, our graduation rate was about 90%, which is a little bit above the state average. So we were in the middle of the pack fighting the good fight. In 2014, a true graduation rate, as measured by the ISBE standards, was 99%. So we went from the middle of the pack to the top of the pack, top 1% in the state and the country. That's a direct result of the work we did in PLCs. Okay, but that's just one criteria. So the next one is our advanced placement program that everybody knows we have really put a lot of focus in. Here's the thing I want to say. We are only in year 2.5 of implementation. We're just now hitting our stride. But the data we're getting back, and as I say, talk is cheap. Can you produce the results? The results are almost, if not as amazing as the graduation rate increases. So let's take a look. In 2012, prior to PLCs, we had 3 AP scholars. That was about typical since the inception of AP. One year we had 5 AP scholars. In 2014, we had 16 AP scholars. So to reach that designation, you not only have to take these national, international tests, you have to succeed on them, and then succeed on many of them. So, we had nearly 5 times as many students. But as I said, we had to build the PLCs, put in the programs, train our teachers, reacclimate our culture and our students, and we are just beginning to hit that stride. Conservatively speaking, I'd say we have 25 AP scholars this year. We could have much higher than that. It could be as high as 30 or 40. We won't know until July. Coming from 3 to 5 year average pre-PLCs to 16 to 20 to 30, that's an enormous gain. Here's the other thing that's occurring. We're not looking to be above the state average. We're going after the top dogs in the state. That's what we have our sights set on. Nothing less than that. Now, anybody can say that, but can you produce the results? So in the next month and a half, the national polls and the statewide polls are going to come out on advanced placement. We'll see where we stand as a school. But I already know this. We have gone from a school that was inching along in an AP program in the last year and a half or so to be in rare category. We are outpacing almost any other Title I school in Illinois, regular Title I school in Illinois. We're blowing them away. And almost every school that's like us, we've already blown them away. And the next step, and this is why PLCs are crucial, a continuous improvement program, is to go after the best schools in the state of Illinois. We benchmark not against schools that are like us, but the best. Stevenson is the best in advanced placement, not only in our state, but regular schools in the country. And that's what we have our sights set on. And we have a ways to go, and PLCs are the way to get there. So the data right now is putting us in the category with some of the best schools in the state, but PLCs are crucial to get to the next level. You see the data pre-PLC and then with PLC implementation. Okay, so that's graduation rate. That's advanced placement program. We also went, of course, from 29 pass exams to 142. All these are school records in PLCs. We went from 2 underrepresented students in our entire school passing exams to 26. Think about that. Only 2 schools, prior to PLC implementation, 2 students in underrepresented categories, whether they're black students or Latino or low-income students. We had 2 of them pass PLC, AP exams. In 14, we had 26. That's pretty remarkable, I'd say. And once again, in a rare category. Our challenge ranking, this is one of the national rankings, we went from 0.6 to 3.0. Now, based on 20 years of trend data, that should make us the most improved high school in America, not just in Illinois. We'll be the most improved in Illinois. We'll be the most improved in America. We'll find out in the next couple of months. That's what we're setting our sights on. With the test scores, the PSAE/ACT stuff, we had the best overall score in our school's history. So we've reduced the time to put into teachers collaborating and working hard together. What's the result? The best test scores in school history. And we had all of our students take these tests, every single one of them. And not the best by a little bit, the best in the history of this test that the school's ever had. Pre-PLC, 55% of our students met or exceed standards. After PLC implementation, 77. 50% in math, and it went up to 62%, so a double-digit increase. But this is part of it, too, with PLCs. It's a continuous improvement program. So we're not done. And that's the most exciting thing about this year. I was so excited to share with the community, and especially our staff and students and parents, that we were the most improved high school in Illinois. I was equally excited that we had so much more to go. There's so much work to be done. Even though we were the most improved, there's so much more to do. It's PLCs is the vehicle to get us there. So this is the chart in my 25 career that I may be most proud of almost anything that I've worked on a team with, and this was a complete team effort. That little triangle up there is Westmont High School, and many of you have seen this before. And it looks just like a nice little graph or scatter plot. It represents something that very few schools in the state have accomplished. So, on the left-hand side, you have the percentage of students who are meeting or exceeding state standards, and on the bottom, the horizontal chart is the percentage of students who are qualify as free and reduced at a particular school. You see the power that economic poverty has on achievement. And you can go back for 15 years of data. Go to the Illinois Interactive Report Card and you can go back for 15 years of data, and guaranteed, every year you see that tremendous pull that poverty has on student achievement. There's a reason why the schools with almost no poverty are much higher achieving, and this is replicated nationwide, and the schools with high poverty rates are steadily declining. So the schools that really are doing it best are those who are fighting against that situation. That little triangle shows that we outperformed everybody in our subgroup, if you will, and most of the schools who had much less percentage of poverty. Now, you see a couple, because every single one of those blue dots represents a high school in Illinois in the scatter plot. You see a few outliers above us. Those schools are selective enrollment schools in Chicago Public Schools. And I love to tell the story that my niece, no credit to me, who's a junior at Harvard, was declined admission to one of those schools. So it's highly selective. So those are the schools, of course, I don't count them as a regular high school. But we've outperformed everybody else like us. And it's very interesting, the schools to the right, most of those too are also selective schools. A couple of those schools have 1 year of data, so it'll be interesting to see where they go trend-wide. But here's the point. We can't rest on our laurels. We've got to keep pushing. PLCs are the way to go. So if you look at graduation rate, if you look at advanced placement program, if you look at where we're scoring on our state and national test scores, we are the most improved in all those categories, and in some cases, the top performing. Those things didn't just happen overnight. We worked really hard through the PLC process. So here's one screen of many I could show you. We set a cultural shift and foundation at our school. And this chart represents faculty feedback about where they stand on PLCs and a true commitment to learning for all students, no matter what it would take. And after several months of discussion and listening, we had the teachers union do an anonymous poll because we didn't want anybody responding except with what they really were committed to and passionate. And this was the response. When we asked the question, are you committed to learning for all as it's outlined in our PLC meetings? And almost everybody said strongly agree, a few said agree, and then there were nobody who disagreed with that. That may seem like just a small little chart again, but that is the work that fueled all the results that we've just looked at. We did this for a series of questions. I thought this was the most important one. So, why PLCs, to wrap it up? Most improved school, but that's not good enough. If we're going to keep getting after it, we need that vehicle to make that happen. The work we do is too sacred, and I use that word very carefully, and too challenging to do in isolation. People have to work together. We know the power of collaboration. My colleagues have talked about it prior to my presentation, that there's power in people working together, that we're smarter when we're all putting our heads together. We have to build common assessments so there's a consistency of expectations across the curriculum, and we can hold each other accountable. The way that a good parent would ask the question, how are you holding yourselves accountable? PLCs are the process by which that's done. So we examine student performance data together instead of in isolation, because then we don't know, is this an aberration? But when we have a common formative assessment, we can check out how each other's students are doing, we can lend advice to each other, we can gauge how we can work together to improve student learning. And we strategize and learn together. Most importantly, we measure student learning increases and learn and improve from each other in that collaborative effort. Because PLCs aren't something you do 1 hour a week. It's something you're doing all the time. The meetings are just the time to really come and share and collaborate. That's really happening all the time across the schools. So as I said, if anybody wants access to more data, we have this, it's on our website. We have copies here at the board meeting. You can stop by the school and pick one up, or you can just go to our website and look at the details there. As I said, good is the enemy of great. That's one of the foundational premises of the small giant vision that Kevin and the district have outlined, and we're committed to continuous improvement. So why do we need PLCs and the time? Because we want the best for our students and we want the best schools possible. And that's going to take the kind of collaboration that's a part of PLC and the time. And the time to collaborate is essential, the best path to continuous improvement, and worth the investment when it leads to better student achievement. So we should be always held accountable. But when we're producing results, we need to continue to work together as a cohesive school community, all partners, parents, school board, central office, administration, teachers, staff, students, the community at large, all working together. And that's why, and I'm so passionate about this work, and I know it's happening. You've seen it happen tonight in our district, and I'm excited about where we're headed in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can do that louder if you want.
What's that? Well, I'll just very quickly summarize. As Jack pointed out, it's a work in progress, and one of the challenges that we have, though, and some of the principals have alluded to this, and I'll tell you a quick story. I have an older brother, Bill, who I I love, and he's actually one of my heroes. I admire him so much. But when we were younger, he was a typical older brother. And I remember he had a Don Kissinger baseball card that I envied. And this one time we were out on the driveway, and he drew a line on the driveway, and he said, "I'll tell you what, Kev, if you can hit 2 shots from that line, you can have my Don Kissinger baseball card." And so I toe the line, ice water in my veins, and I sink it. And so then I get the ball, and I'm setting up, and I'm about to shoot a second time. He says, "Oh, wait a second." And with his foot, he erases the line, and he moves it back, and he says, "Okay, now you got to shoot from there." And I of course argue, that's not fair. You just change, you know. And anytime we're out there, we usually shot from the same line. So now you've changed everything, and so much to my, even though I pled my case, he still made me shoot from the line. I didn't make it the second time, you know. But that's essentially what is occurring, and what's difficult for us. The Prairie State has been consistent up until this year, and unfortunately, this year our students took the park. When you look at the state assessment with ISAT, that line they have continually kind of redrawn for us. And so in 2011, our students took the test. We had certain cut scores. One of the arguments we always had as a unit district and school districts always complain about is you would always look at 8th grade ISAT scores and where the students were at, and then there was this drop off for junior high school. And that's because we took ISAT in Prairie State. Now, as educators, we knew why there was that difference. You know, the ISAT was aligned to the standards at the time. It was truly an achievement test, whereas the Prairie State was based on ACT, which was not aligned, and it was a sorter. ACT was developed as a sorter and a predictor to see how well students would perform in college and what students should receive academic scholarships, and that's what ACT was for. And so we were trying to draw these comparisons. So the State Board of Ed, in their infinite wisdom, said, you know what, there is this disconnect. So their solution was, rather than changing one of the assessments, they changed the cut scores. So 2012, everybody saw their cut scores drop. But as what was illustrated by Kristen and John, that impacted other districts more than it necessarily impacted us. And then we get to the test in 2013, and the cut scores are the same, but now they changed the questions on the test, and they start to embed the Common Core, even though we're not technically accountable to the Common Core at that point. And so they changed the test. So again, you know, that line was redrawn. And so, so then you start getting used to those new questions and the new test. And so now we take the park in 2014. And so, you know, but by other measures that we're looking at, we believe that PLCs are making a positive impact in our district, leading greater student achievement. And we're hoping that the state settles on an assessment and standards for a couple of years, so that we can start getting that trend data on the state assessment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have to say I very much appreciate, I know this has been long and everything, but I have to say I am very excited about this presentation. We are seeing great strides in our students. I would also like to say thank you to our superintendent and our principals. During the referendum presentation, we talked about leadership changes, and I think tonight is a great example for our district to see what our leadership has done in our buildings, and to bring these things like the PLCs and ALPs and all the rest of the alphabet soup. That is important. It is. I just have to say I'm humbled by that, and I thank you all very much for this. I know this is a lot to comprehend, but I don't know about anyone else, but I was very excited about seeing what we're seeing here, the achievements that are going on in our district. So I just want to take a moment and applaud our principals and our superintendent. Thank you. What you do every day matters as leaders in our district and our schools, and it is apparent that that is working its way into our classrooms with our teachers and our students, and I thank you for that.
A few quick comments. First of all, I think in some ways this is overdue, but at the same time, I know it takes a long time to get the data to show, you know, it doesn't happen overnight. These things happen over time, and you need to be able to show trends, and so time is required. But this all kicked off before I was on the board, but at the same time, when this first started, on day one when I heard about this, I was very against it. It was one of those things where I'm looking at, okay, my schedule is going to be screwed up. My kid's schedule, my wife's schedule, this messes with the middle of my week. And there was a lot of people grabbing the pitchforks and the torches, and I was one of them. And then I took a stop for a second, and I started asking around. I know friends, family, and so forth, and relatives, and everything in education in the area and across the country. And I started talking to people who knew about this. And I was hearing two things. I was hearing, one, that if it's done and it's done right and it's done consistently, it's enormously successful. But at the same time, if it's not, if it turns into party time for the teachers or a chance to socialize, then it's just a waste of time. The other thing that I heard, and this was one of the equally as big for me, was that a lot of families, this was difficult to adjust to, but once they did, it was not a big deal. It was something to, as part of the day, or they came into a district where that was the way it was, and they say, you get used to it. What I did is I kind of took a step back, and I talked to people, and I said, you know what, I'm a big fan of quality over quantity. If at the end of the day, my kid comes out with a better education, better prepared to move on in the world and everything else, then if that means we sacrifice a little bit of face time, then I'd rather give up that face time and have a better product at the end. But it all comes down to proving if it's working. And if we can't show that it's working, and if we can't come in here and say, this is what we're getting from it, which I know is difficult because there's a lot of factors. We've had a lot of changes in staff and a lot of other things. There's a lot of moving parts here. But this is a lot. But this is what I wanted to see. And I wanted to see something true. If it wasn't working, I wanted to see that it wasn't working. But I look at it, and I'm hearing things from talking to parents and from what I've seen, my other exposure to the board. Before I came on, there was a very strong sense of Manning versus Miller. And I don't see that now. At the junior high, when my son was in the junior high, there was a big, you could tell who came from Manning and who came from Miller. And now what I'm seeing is a lot more consistency. You're seeing the same quality of education. And you go all the way down, you look at our high school's achievements and what we've gotten already, and you say, okay, if I have 2 first grade teachers not teaching the same, and when those kids go into 2nd grade, they're at different levels, that teacher has to teach to different levels or work to get one caught up. And then you amplify that by saying, I've got 2 different schools with 2 different levels of education coming out of there feeding into a junior high. Now that junior high has to teach to different levels. And then get them all on the same page and prep for the high school. And how much communication was there between the elementary and the junior high and the junior high and the high school? And I look at it now, and Jack, I know you know most of the 8th graders. You probably know them all now. I bet you know most of them now already, and before they're even coming in. And the communication is and I look at this kind of like a diet. It's, you don't diet, hit your goal weight, and stop. You keep going, you keep trying to make it better. Certain things get easier, certain things get harder. And you're working with some changing targets, like you said, with these things, and you need to keep adapting to it. So I really appreciate, this was a lot of material, but I appreciate it. So thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I do have one other thing. I'm not done yet. Especially, maybe for the younger, especially probably for elementary school, but also for junior high and high school. Can you maybe speak for a moment, or at any of the levels, for what we offer in terms of kids where the parents have to work and they can't be home? Now, I know for junior high and high school you have more kids maybe that can be home without the parents, but I know for a fact at the high school level, because of personal experience, the availability for the kids to go in during this time and get caught up and get tutoring and things like that. But because this does create a situation, especially, like I said, at the elementary schools, anything that can be said about that for anyone where that's a very legitimate concern.
Like during PLCs, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I know that at Miller, well, we do offer like Language Stars, the Lego Club, but those are paid programs that parents can enroll their children in while, they wait that extra hour. As far as anything else, we don't offer anything else. I can tell you that there are plenty of times where kids don't get picked up. We do have our teacher assistants. We try to have one, we rotate them so that kids are never left alone, and so they're in the office, and if a student doesn't get picked up, then we wait there with them. So they're never left alone. They're well taken care of. But as far as the programs, probably just the paid-for programs.
Speak to that too. We're the same way. Sometimes have students left over. We do have the language stars. The first year that we started this, we offered time after school for families, and that time really dwindled down to no kids staying after. It started with heavier attendance, and by October, November, it started to really cut down, and then we get to a point where we didn't have students staying at all anymore. So.
Yeah, it really isn't an issue, and when it is an issue, we call right away, and they're like, oh my God, we forgot, I'm sorry, and they come right away. So it really isn't, I can't say it's really an issue. Yeah.
And to answer the question for the junior high, it was a non-issue the first year, and it remains to be that. However, our Wednesdays have changed. We really like what Jack in the high school is doing as far as grabbing some students that were specific that needed some extra intervention. We have homework club Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, but we decided to use the TAs that we have on staff. We chose not more than 12 students, and we have our aides work with those 12 students that are students that were identified that need the extra help, that almost one-on-one experience that they would get to kind of get them in gear and get them going, and they would be successful. So that is something that we work with the high school on, the transportation of getting those kids home on the same bus. But that is something that we've added this year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, that was a good point. Thanks, Matt. Anybody else have any comments before we move on? Well, thank you very much, very much. Appreciate the time. Okay, the next item on the agenda, Illinois Reads event.
Good evening. Thanks, everyone, for having us tonight. I know it's getting a little bit late, so we'll be brief. But we did want to thank you very much for inviting us back to speak about our upcoming community literacy event, Illinois Reads. My name is Sheila Rue, and I'm the media specialist at the junior high. And this is Amy Quattrone. She's the assistant principal at the junior high. The launch date for the Westmont Illinois Reads is going to be at the high school on Saturday, April 18th from 10 to 1. As we said before, we're very excited to be the first location chosen for the launch outside of Springfield. Since we're going to be the pilot community for this Illinois Reading Council event, we're spending a lot of time on the details and to make sure that we spotlight Westmont in its spectacular light. We are expecting over 500 people at our event and really hope that all of the Westmont families will be a part of that day. We also appreciate everyone's support. It's really been a true community collaboration, and we're really honored to be a part of it. We also want to recognize the many volunteers in our community and throughout the state from the Illinois Reading Council who will be there on that day to volunteer.
So we do have a few updates for you tonight. First of all, the food court vendors have been selected, and they will be featured at our events. Thank you to Nancy's Pizza, Sweet and Savory, and Uncle Bub's for your sponsorship and participation. Speaking of sponsors, we have been receiving financial contributions from community members and organizations such as the Armstrong family and Mrs. Charlton with the Jazzercise. The Westmont Citizens Police Academy and Fire Academies have also donated to us. So we're posting this on our Illinois Reads website and our Facebook page. And thank you all. Book clubs are in full force. Many are reading Monsters, the 1985 Bears and the Wild Heart of Football book. One group actually met at the Westmont Public Library last week, and judging from their pictures that we have posted as well, they had a lot of fun. The Chicago Thunder semi-pro football team is confirmed to perform demonstration scrimmages, so we are inviting our high school football players and Westmont Wildcats to attend and play with them. The Westmont Fire Department will be bringing a truck and possibly Sparky the fire dog for photo opportunities. We also have more photo opportunities available with storybook characters. We have a red carpet and everything, and I heard that Clifford the dog would actually be making an appearance. So. Approximately 25 authors will be attending the event to promote their books and to speak to students and community members. Autograph sessions will also be taking place. The essay contest is in full swing. Several essays from students around the state have been submitted, which is really great to see. And finally, we have chosen one of our bookmark contest winners from Miller. We'd like to congratulate Lizzie Chanel. She's a 5th grader at Miller. She's not here tonight, but we did want to honor her and say her name and tell her that we loved her theme and her artistry in the bookmark. You all have an example of the bookmark. We're going to be promoting that throughout the community, hopefully putting it in shopping bags and different things throughout. So mark your calendars for April 18th at Westmont High School from 10 to 1. Stay as long as or as little as you like, but definitely come hungry.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda, an action item regarding the 2015-2016 staffing.
And just briefly, the recommendation is to basically maintain the same staffing level that we currently have for the 14-15 school year. There may be a slight reduction in special education FTE for Miller and the high school as we finalize that. And then also with the dual language program and growing our dual language program, we'll be hiring a dual language teacher and a bilingual interventionist. And then also we currently have 1.5 school psychologists for the 5 schools. And we've addressed other needs in student services such as social work, but that's one area that we've overlooked. And so the recommendation is to employ another full-time psychologist. And so with the anticipated reduction in FTE in special ed, the overall staffing increase would be 2.5. And then we're anticipating 2 early retirements. And so there will be a cost savings there.
Kevin, just out of curiosity, why would there be a reduction in special education teachers?
Because of the number of students on with IEPs is being reduced, and therefore the number of minutes, and that would translate then to you wouldn't need as much special ed support.
Okay.
And just to follow up on that, that is something that is looked at every year. And
right.
so if that changes, then the staffing changes?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the 2015-2016 staffing as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please, Mrs. McMahon.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes. Okay, motion passed then. Then the approval of the regular education transportation contract.
We entered into a 2-year contract with Westway that expired at the end of the 13-14 school year. And then last year, we extended the contract on a 1-year basis, and you can extend each year on a 1-year basis by mutual agreement of the parties. Westway did approach me and needed a much higher than anticipated cost increase in what was, originally in our contract parameters. We did do some negotiations, and I was able to reduce the amount that they were looking for. It's not an optimal cost increase, but last year at this time they were here because we were having some service delivery issues and things like that. They've really stepped up their game, and I really have had literally almost no complaints this year. I mean, there's been a couple things which are to be expected. Their level of service has been really top-notch this year. And so, there's always pains and cost of going with a new vendor. Again, we talked a little bit last week with, last meeting with the SACID, contract and some things. So this is kind of seems to be the cycle that you go through about every 3 years. All of a sudden, transportation companies come with big increases, and you wind up going out to bid, and now you're switching companies. You go through those growing pains again, and all the change pains and things. So but the estimate is probably about a $105,000 increase for next year, and I recommend that we continue with Westway for next year. We hold them to the high standards that we've set, make them accountable if they don't deliver, but that we do go out to bid next year in November, and we'll see what happens at that point in time. And the other thing is, I've had several conversations with them. Again, they know I'm not pleased at all with this, but we are looking at our routing to see if there's any other efficiencies that we can create in our routing. They're going to be doing ridership counts. Maybe there's a way to eliminate a route or something from one of our things that would, save us, $10,000 or $20,000 a year. We're also going to look at even school times and see, obviously not for next year, but if that's something that might make some sense in adjusting school times so we can pair our routes. The problem is we're a small district and we require lots of buses for the number of students we transport. Our transportation isn't very efficient. So we're going to look at see if there's some other ways that we can create some efficiencies, and then bring those to the board and see if it would be amenable to the board to make changes.
Well, first, thank you for getting the increase diminished. That was wonderful. I know that's a funny sentence, but yeah. Can I have one quick question. First of all, yes, I'm happy to hear that hopefully some of the issues that we were experiencing have been addressed, and I'm happy to hear that that's diminished. When we're talking about going out to bids, how many bus companies are there?
Not that
Like,
many.
yeah,
Not that many. And then the other, there's your First Student, which we had them prior to Westway. There's Illinois Central, Septran, but I think they pretty much do special ed. So there's maybe a couple others, but again, you have to look at where do they have a hub. Westway is really kind of at the farthest reach of what I would consider feasible to be able to bus our students. Because again, if their hub is too far away, you've got all that time for them to travel to actually get to your district. First Student does have a bus barn in Westmont, but again, they came to us with very, very large increases the last time, and that's how we wound up with Westway. So, the ideal thing would be that they had a bus barn in town. There's not really, I'm going to reach out to the village and see if there might be some space as well where we could do something. Obviously, Lyle uses them as well. So there's some shared interest between Lyle and Westmont about how maybe we can't develop some kind of relationship there with them. So there's things that we're looking at, and it didn't help that District 99 went with a different vendor this year either. So that's causing some issues for us. So again, we'll see, but things that happen in other districts do impact us sometimes.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Any other questions or comments? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the one-year contract extension for regular education transportation services with Westway Coach Incorporated of Oak Brook, Illinois, as presented.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Natbush?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes. Okay, the superintendent's report.
Okay, a couple of items, including my report. First of all, registration. We're beginning the registration process for the 2015-2016 school year. And the week of April 13th through April 17th, there will be kindergarten registration at both Manning and Miller Elementary Schools, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., and then again at 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., and that's for kindergarten registration. And then for families to plan, if they're looking at the summer calendar, we have set our registration dates this summer. We'll have registration on July 21st, 2015 and August 10th, 2015, both days 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m. As the previous couple of years, registration will be at the junior high, And all of our schools will have registration at the junior high on July 21st and August 10th. And then in terms of communication, just again, a reminder that CUSD 201 does have a referendum question on the April 7th ballot. And the question is asking permission to issue $19.7 million in bonds to address the safety and security needs at Manning, Miller, Westmont Junior High, and Westmont High School.
And if needed, you can vote early.
Yes.
Like Matt did.
And one other thing, just I think a couple of the principals referenced it, but the PowerPoint that the admin team went through this evening, we will get that posted on the district website.
Okay, are there any board reports?
No.
I know I'm going to bring it up in our future meetings and such as I do, but tomorrow night is our District Fine Arts Festival, March 25th, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock at the high school. If you've never been to that, it is a spectacular event. Another one of the pluses of having a unit school district, and it's in a district of our size. We have all of our schools participating in this, Manning, Miller, Junior High, and High School. And to see the all the students singing on the stage together, all of them together, and all the band perform together is a remarkable moment. So if you've never been, please, please come on tomorrow night. Did you have something?
I do. Wanted to remind the community that this coming Saturday at the high school is the Recycled Life event, which is partially sponsored by the high school SADD club. This is an event that is organized around organ donor education as well as being a blood drive. And the young lady who is sponsoring this event is a survivor of cancer as well as is surviving as a result of an organ transplant. So she's highly committed to education throughout the community. This is the pilot event for this Recycled Life program, but they're planning on taking this event to communities throughout the western suburbs to start with, and then throughout northern Illinois. There are a lot of things that will be going on that day, including our mayor will be there and doing some speaking. The Chicago Thunder football team is also committed to be there. They've signed up over I think over 24 people at this point to do blood donations, just their organization alone. And they'll be doing a lot of activities that day, including signing autographs and interacting with the students and children. There's face painting, there's crafts, hero posters, music and entertainment. There will also be food and various things that will be sold or offered by Westmont businesses from throughout the community. It's an all-day event, 9 to 3. I think the major focus at 1 p.m. will be some of the special speakers and that type of thing. So if you have time during the day or only have a small amount of time, that's a good period of time to be there, is around that 1 p.m. hour. You're welcome to go on the Facebook page or the website to schedule a blood donation, which is being sponsored by LifeSource, and just really encourage people to participate. Just very important to get the education out and to have the community involved in this activity.
Okay, are there any other board reports? Okay, are there any other public comments? Okay, then future meetings is again District Fine Arts Festival tomorrow night, 7 o'clock at the high school, and which involves all of our schools. Spring break, March 30th through April 6th. Teacher Institute Day is April 7th, and there is no school. That is also Election Day. Kindergarten registration, April 13th through the 17th at Manning and Miller schools, and the next school board meeting will be April 14th, 2015 at 7 o'clock, Westmont Village Hall. Okay. The chair
She's locked out.
Okay. The chair will enter a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining, personnel issues, student discipline, and probable litigation, and to review closed session minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please, Mrs. McMahon.
Mrs. Notbush?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
And there will be 2 votes after closed session. Thank you.
Is that just delayed?
Okay, we are now back after closed session. We have two motions. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the personnel recommendations as amended.
So moved. Second.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Ms. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
And Mrs. Notbush?
Yes.
Okay, and the second.
And Mr. Price.
And Mrs. Price?
We already got the majority.
That's what happens when you rotate it. I don't have it, so I rotate. All right, we're ready.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the board action on closed session minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Caparelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush?
Yes.
The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.